Now I've tried many ways to pre-warm tires. I've got a heat box I've used. Now in this work session, one of our goals here is we want to get a new tire on the 650, and we're also going to install a new rear sprocket, a SPROX. And what we have happening here is, while we're looking at our beautiful roses, it's a nice sunny day. It's over 70 degrees, and putting a tire out in the sun, let it warm up, it'll make the install a little bit quicker and easier. Now we got about 20,000 miles on the rear sprocket. We've already replaced the chain. Time to replace the sprocket, and I wanted to upgrade. I have these on several other bikes, and they are really nice. And they not only look good, they wear forever. They're hardened steel where the teeth are, and anodized aluminum in by the hub. And the one on the FCR has over 20,000 miles on it, and it's just been just as reliable as could be. You have no wear, nothing like when you have an all aluminum sprocket. And it's I would guess it's half the weight of a steel sprocket when I took the old one off and replaced it. Now if you follow along with all the things we do to motorcycles here, we've already replaced the chain a couple of thousand miles ago, and I was just waiting for a tire change. That was the next thing, and we are ready for a tire change, believe me. We're ready for a tire change and a sprocket change, and part of my philosophy is always, when you take the bike apart, do as many of the maintenance things as you can. Now a little tip that'll make the job go a little quicker, a little easier. Before you actually take the tire off the bike, and if you know you're gonna replace the sprocket, loosen up, because these nuts are usually Loctited on here pretty good. And it's a lot easier to get these loose than when you have the sprocket and you have to put it in get one of your friends to hold it. And these are not that tight. I'm really surprised. I have seen I have seen some that maybe the Loctite is, it's 10 years old or something. But by breaking these loose, you just make it a little bit easier to get these off. And all you have to do is break them. They'll come right off once we pull this apart. Now in theory, what you're supposed to do is replace the chain and the sprockets all at the same time. And that's nice if it's convenient, or if you have the money to do it, or the ambition. But in this case, we have the chain's only got 1,000 miles on it. So, and I really keep track of the chain, the tension, and the lube and everything, so it tends to last. But it is time, and I can see this sprocket already has some little wear on it, and rather than beat a dead horse, it's a great time. I'm going to do the tire change. I figured having that sprocket all done at once would be a good investment. Of course, every bike comes apart just a little bit different, but in this case, since we've had the support, I know to make it easy, there's a real easy way to make it easy. Get the brake caliper off and get it hanging up before you even try to take the axle out or anything. Anything you can do to make this easy. Now heating up the tire is one of the things you can do, and what I'm going to do is once I pull this tire off, I have a couple other projects to work on here, but I'm going to let it sit out in the sun for 15-20 minutes. And what that hopefully, while that tire is sitting out in the sun, it'll soften it up, just make it easier to get it. Easier is the thing we're trying to have here. Now with the caliper off, I can see I've got about half of the brake pad material left. We're not even close to needing pads yet. And this bike, by the way, has wonderful brakes, both front and back, wonderful brakes. So when it comes time to do the pads, I'm going to try to replace them with exactly the same pads that came out. And it hasn't chewed up the rotors yet, which some of the brake pads tend to chew up the rotors. These are a good combination here. And of course, the bottom line is every bike is just a little bit different. As far as taking things apart, there's almost no universal way to do it. Every one is a little bit different. This one is nothing different special about it, except the fact you got to really pull on this axle. Whoa! Okay, so we know we've got an issue with pulling this axle out. So here's one of the things, when an axle gets to be a nuisance to take out, and sometimes they do get tight for whatever reason, you have to always have a piece of steel rod to just make it easier. Get the chain off, and the wheel should come right out. Now I always want to take the spacer that belongs on this side, put it on this side. There's usually one on each side. Sometimes they're similar, sometimes they're not similar. Okay, and we're ready to pull this apart. Now I have, oh, the brakes stay. I have one thing I want to do. The way I planned this day out, I want to put this tire out in the sun while it's still on the wheel, so just to soften it up so it's easier to take it off. Just all I'm looking for is to make things easier. Just thought I'd show this. Before I pull a sprocket, I've already got the bolts loose. Does that look nicer than that? I'm gonna have to think about this. I gotta think about it. Yeah, I think it looks pretty nice. I not only love the way they look, these are super light. When I take this steel one off, it's gonna be almost double the weight of that. Now this tire change will have a couple of new things. At Luciano's suggestion, I picked up a jar of this No More. This is the lube, and to get the tires on and off. We'll find out how that works today. And thanks to Bob Navola, we changed his tire when it was about 50 degrees out. We were going crazy, but this will make it a little bit easier. This is called the fuzzy yellow thing. You can get it on Amazon for about 30 bucks. That holds the tire in place. Now I've never used this when I've used the tape method. So what I'm going to do today is try to use the tape method and this, and see if that makes it even easier. And the No More. And by the way, you can get this on Amazon too. Now it was Chris that suggested to me at one time that we were buying mirrors or something. She said I can get them on Amazon Prime. And within a month, Karen and I had joined Amazon Prime, and we try to buy all our stuff there because the shipping's always free. Now before using a bead breaker, a couple of ideas. What I did down there, you can see I put a lot of duct tape, Gorilla Tape on the metal parts that are sharp so it wouldn't scuff the wheel. Any place the wheel would touch. That seems to help. And before I go to break the bead, I just spray some simple green or put some Dawn, or I guess you could even use that lube stuff. And the good old fashioned, very inexpensive Harbor Freight bead breaker does it again. Now I've tried many ways to pre-warm tires. I've got a heat box, I've used heat guns, hair dryers, put them by heating vents, the quartz heater, but nothing even comes close to how good it is. Just put it in the sun, and you want to get the sun. If you understand about the sun, you want the sun to be coming right at 90 degrees to the tire. That's why I put it in a chair so I can move it around. And if possible, if you know you're going to change your tire at lunchtime, go out early in the morning and just keep moving the chair, and you'd be amazed how quick the tire heats up. It's like a solar panel. Now, depending, of course, on how bright the sun is, we have a digital Craftsman. We're at 143 degrees. That's going to make mounting a tire just a piece of cake. Now, this one hasn't sat in the sun long enough. So let's see. This tire is only 90. So this one came out of the shaded garage. We've gone up 50 just by putting it in the sun, 50 degrees. And that's what makes getting a tire on the rim without scratching or butchering it all up beautiful. Now, I'll wait. I'm going to go. I have other things to do here. Give this 15-20 minutes. Let this warm up before I even try to pull it off. And I totally understand that some people have rims. They don't care if they scratch them, beat them up, hit them with a rubber hammer. But these rims, and I don't know, I've probably painted 20 wheels in the last year. The last couple of years, well, And we've even got extra wheels that I've painted, so wheels that even aren't on bikes. But when you put all this time into wheels, as I've done, it doesn't matter which bike it is, even if it's the RD, I don't want to scratch them. And even worse, when you put the god-awful time it takes to polish a wheel, you don't want to scratch it. Or even the gold wheels. Now they're going to be 4 years old soon. They're still looking pretty good. And I will never forget how long it took to polish these wheels. I swore I'd never scratch them. I probably did already though. And these are relatively new. We did this not too long ago, but it looks like they're holding up just fine. But these are my pride and joy. These and the videos are all on Windy YouTube of prepping and painting and that Sprocket. Now the next thing is this bike has a little over 20,000 on it. Probably, and the chain is not worn out. It's not even halfway through its normal lifespan. So I'm amazed. That must be a really good quality chain on there. Because usually at about 15,000 they start getting soft spots and hard spots, and this one is the exception to the rule. So now with everything apart, might be a good time to go let that tire cook for half an hour and then come back in. And by that time it should be a lot easier to do. Now this part of it is always subject to change anyway. I pre-cut, and by the way, this is not duct tape, it's Gorilla tape, a little bit stronger. I always try first to use thinner bands, just easier. If that doesn't work, I'll just use full strips. But I think the tire is warm enough, and I always pre-cut the tape, and I've almost found it impossible to do this with gloves. So what I try to do is not get this into the bead area. I want to leave this because this is going to be where I'm going to want to. There's no mark on a Michelin tire, not anymore. So we just assuming I've been putting it there, and the balance has been fine. And when the tire is soft, it gets crunchy, and we need 4 of these. So I'm just going to do this. Just don't get any down in the bead area. That's the only do or don't here. Oh, and that tire we did for Bob Navola, what a killer that was. Holy mackerel. Still hurts just thinking about it. But the whole idea of doing it this way is you don't need a tire machine, number one, and there's no chance you're going to scratch the rim. And all the time and effort I put into these wheels, like a teenage kid with these wheels. Anyway, and so far this has worked pretty good for us. We'll see if it's our lucky day. But it makes all the difference in the world when the tire is soft. It's all about the tire being soft. And we're going to try this stuff. We'll see if Luciano is right. He usually is. I'm not sure how much this stuff was because, again, it's on Amazon. And that's the side that's going to go on first, so we want to get that on. And if this doesn't work, I know Dawn does, so I always keep the Dawn handy for all those fails. Alright, now it's time to see if it's our lucky day. Now, the trick is you gotta get your hands clean of that stuff. Every time I do that, I get some kind of perverse thrill out of it. Okay, so Luciano's stuff seemed to work good. Last step, get the tape off. Now it sometimes can be a little tricky getting the tape off. We don't want to leave any down in the tire. So what I never pull on this, I want to make sure, and boy, when the tire is soft like this, it just makes it so much easier. See, my hands are so slippery from that no more stuff. What I wanted to show, and of course I got to do it 4 times now. Get that loose. But always make sure you get all the tape out. Well, the next thing is to put the tire valve in. Pound this down a little bit, make sure it seats. And we'll check the beads for leaks. It might be our lucky day. Now my compressor, because it doesn't, basically because it's worn out. Sometimes it takes a minute or two to build some pressure up enough to get these inflated. And you hear that pop. You hear that pop? You know it's your lucky day. Oh, I hear part of it. Oh, I hear another part. Now what I'm going to do is put 50 pounds of air in the tire. That'll help seat it, balance it, and then what we're going to do, I'll clean the rim all up with simple green, get it all polished up. Now we'll get busy on that sprocket. Now I can just take my hand but I'll check it with some simple green or some Windex or whatever. Just make sure that looks like that worked out pretty good. I had a test for a bead leak. There's nothing better that I found than Windex. Bead is okay. Curvy girls are okay. Never had a curvy girl leak. And boy, does that make it convenient, since I check the tire pressure every time I ride the bike. Just old school habits. And it has nothing to do with getting a flat. It's just that bike handle's way different with less or more pressure. You can alter it, and where we ride, the roads are bumpy. So my tires always tend to be on the soft side, 28 to 30 pounds. If you were doing a track day, you run a lot more pressure, but I kind of like soft tires. Okay. Looks good. I don't see any reason not to clean the wheel up and get the sprocket mounted. Now I always enjoy showing people this, that first time they ever change a tire. When you see you're down to the bars, and we probably went a little too far even on this one. I always take a sheetrock knife, just take a window out and look at how the plies are. And you basically have, this is probably less than 1/8 of an inch. And that's all you have. If you're riding aggressively, that's all you have between you and a flat tire or whatever. So my suggestion is, if you cut a piece of the tire here, of course it's 3 times as thick. Keep this in mind next time you try to get that last few rides out of a tire. It might save your life. Or at least be less inconvenient. Now before I balance this up, again, I want to make sure this is clean. I already have put some simple green on about 10 minutes ago. I'm putting some more on. I let it dry, let it just sit that way, because this will cut the grease, make the rim like brand new in very short time. Once it's back on the bike, I'll throw a coat of wax on it. But again, I know I like things clean. A lot of my friends do too, and so we try to share this information of keeping a bike clean. It's also a good idea at the end of this to wipe the disc with some brake parts cleaner on a paper towel, just to clean it up. But this was a relatively painless tire change. And I always think when you do it yourself, you know it's done right. You don't wind up with a big gouge in the rim or something that they don't want to own up to. Now, because we have the nuts broken loose while they were in place, this part of it should be relatively easy. Get out the Loctite so I don't forget it. Me forget stuff? Anyway, this part, now I'm going to clean all these parts with diesel fuel. This hub is filthy. These are parts that are hard to get at when the bike is not apart. When it's apart, what a sin to put them back together. And I have seen guys that have taken a bike to a dealer and they don't even wipe it off, let alone pretend to clean it. Just put it right back dirty. Not me. I'm old school. I'm cranky. I'm an old fart. You say what you want. But I always like to see if somebody says their bike is clean, look at the back wheel. Maybe it is. Then look at the front wheel, because the rest of it follows usually in suit. And we'll run all these bolts and nuts and everything on the polishing wheel before we put them back. And by the way, cleaning this kind of gunk off the bike, diesel fuel is the only thing I know that really gets it off. And I'm looking forward to seeing this puppy all back together. We're not going to ride it in the next couple days, so my plan is just let it sit overnight and check the pressure in the morning. Of course, just overkill safety stuff. Now, a lot of people would put that on. Now, we're going to clean this up. So this is a little bottle with diesel fuel and a rag that never goes back. It either goes back into the box with the diesel fuel or in the garbage, and we just get another one. And as your oldest rags, you can just use these up. Now, these great little brushes are handy for getting in these little spots. We'll take a few minutes and clean this up, because this is a part once the bike is put together and it's all bolted up. And by the way, this is a dedicated diesel fuel rag that stays in my tub with all the diesel fuel stuff. I wouldn't want to bring that in the house even, but this will help clean it up. Anyway, and you can see right away, even if you just let that sit for 2 minutes, get rid of this, and we'll put all new grease on everything before we put it back together. Let me show this up close. I think a lot of people don't understand how quick this works. I think you can see the parts that are not done, the parts that are done. Just a little detail like this, and I'll do all the hardware, of course, as I put the bike back together. What I try to do is clean the hardware every time I take the bike apart, so that now that 9-year-old bike is only looking 8 years old. Anyway, let me show this. Not sure our macro lens is going to show this, but here's one. Which one would you rather have on your bike? and all of these little detail things only take seconds. And I'll do the axle nuts and all of that stuff too at the same time. But when you start with this is a 9-year-old bike, a new bike. And from this point on, it's all pretty cut and dry. Want to Loctite these back on. One by one. Time for a new Loctite. Where's the new one? Who says he doesn't buy new Loctite every once in a while? Anyway, I'm not sure that Loctite needs is necessary, but it's certainly not going to hurt anything. And since we've got this basically back to like brand new, now when I torque this, and of course I'll tighten everything by hand, then I'll, like in a star pattern, and I'll wait till it's finally installed to put the final torque on it, because it'll be nice and stable in the bike. Here I'm holding it, and it's just easier to do it the other way. Oh, and that's all put together and polished up. That's a thing of beauty. And then the question is always, which one would you rather have? Just a point of reference, this is the tub where I clear plastic tub. I keep all diesel fuel rags and anything that has brake fluid or diesel fuel on it in that tub. I don't want it commingling it. And certainly never go in a washing machine. This, when they're so dirty I can't use them anymore, I just throw them away. Now once again we've run into where the Michelin tires are very close. In fact, this had one weight on it, and it only needs one weight here to balance it. That's real good. So I'm going to continue lining up that little because there's no dot on the Michelins, that little I don't know, little white thing that goes, I guess it takes the place of the dot. Anyway, look like they're done pretty good. That's really close. One of the little things I do just to satisfy my own need for everything being neat and clean, I buff out the weight, the balancing weight, just run a buffing wheel on it on the end of an electric drill. I cleaned up all the bolt heads on the disc and cleaned off all the crud that was on the edge and on the inside edge here with a little wire wheel. That wheel is ready to put back on the motorcycle. The rubber biscuits go back in. The spacer on the sprocket, that's ready to put together. And then the last step, of course, slide it in. Get all the spacers, and I always leave the spacers go on this side of the bike and on that side on the right side. I cleaned up the axle on the end, polished it a little bit, put the brakes stay in. Basically reverse of taking it apart. Another good tip when you're putting everything back together, and sometimes it gets to be a pain, what I do is put a little bit of grease. The grease holds that in place, and a little extra grease is obviously not going to hurt anything. Here's a little tip that's unique to this bike. I'm not sure it works on other bikes. This little part in the back, unless you have a helper holding it and getting the axle lined up, can really be tricky. But if you put a bungee cord on this, put some tension on that, then this side almost automatically lines up. It's a good little tip. And that is one of the little tricks of this particular bike. Just makes putting it back together that much easier. That bungee cord is just like having a third hand. Now what's left is Loctite up the caliper bolts one by one, and that's pretty much the end of the mechanical part of this. We got the chain adjusted, torqued everything down, tightened the axle. Well, that was a nice install today. Well, I've done a lot of detailing on this bike. I've painted the side parts, the tail piece, the license plate piece. A lot of stuff I've done, but this has really added a nice dimension to the bike. I really think that was worth the effort. And we did it in a time where we changed the tire anyway, so now we have a new tire, new sprocket. All we need now is a day to ride. And what I've been doing with my just lower that down with my nice electronic winch, It gives me a nice feeling of safety when a baby is around, or I'm working on this by myself and laying in the garage on a cold day, and you never know when this thing is going to tip over. I'm getting very tipsy in my old age, but anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. And this was a good, worthwhile mod. And thanks for watching.